to build this kind of campaign on understanding and the perspective of people who have direct experience. That kind of speaks to the very focus of this session about how to really amplify those voices. So I'll give you a quick snapshot of how we developed the campaign. In reality, you see 6 months here, but it was 9 months in development. And I suppose that brought in a need to touch in with our consultative group about 3 times, and also just to test the messaging to make sure that what we were formulating and the kind of perspectives that we were hearing from our consultative group and from the campaign participants was a message that resonated with people, one that really would build empathy. And I think probably we'll see some of the messaging in a minute, but we tried to find a range of different methods to deliver the campaign, so across TV, radio, online, and social media, in a way that would try and target and reach a broad spectrum of the Irish audience. And there's kind of details and figures on there that for time I won't go into. But I think what speaks loudest is some of the content from the campaign. So I'll play you a quick video and one of the radio adverts, just so that you get a taste of what it is we're talking about. And hopefully you're getting the volume there. And the way these campaign videos were delivered, like a whole range of different formats. So as I say, there was 21 videos in 75 different formats, ranging from 6 seconds for very snappy social media pieces to a longer 3-minute form video. And I'll just play you one of the radio ads, which I think is a very striking and very distinctive voice. Messaging on that. Okay. So just, I suppose, moving on from those kind of examples, what we were looking to do, as well as the kind of the materials from the campaign, is to try and build the conversation organically. And that meant reaching out to people in sports, to media personalities, people who are in the public eye, and in different kinds of policy spaces that maybe some of these conversations weren't being had, and bringing in political figures and community groups, and all again using the campaign hashtag to try and bring the conversations together. Across social media, you see the kind of different messages and approaches and different formats that we tried to deliver the message in. These are some of the kind of quote cards and videos, really to attempt, obviously we're all bombarded with so many messages each day, to try and pick out really core pieces from the interviews that we did with people that would really resonate. And all the video recordings and all the campaign videos that we did were all two-way conversations between people who had experienced racism, and that idea of an exchange of knowledge and discussion was one that we wanted really to put forefront. We also provided a number of short video posts, and I'm not sure if the sound desk can just hit play on this. It's just a short. Is not working. So we'll move it on. The joys of modern technology. But then I think just on how some of the campaign was received, like we sought to try and figure out for later runs of the campaign as well, how the campaign made people feel. And as you can see here, 3/4 of people claim the ad made them think more about how people of different ethnicities have the same wants and wishes in life as everyone else, which is, the core to that message, because we're all human beings, we're all equal. And also, we saw a very high percentage of people agreeing and understanding that more needs to be done to raise awareness about what it's like being an ethnic minority, specifically in Ireland. And the campaign was displayed over 27 million times to people in Ireland. So for a country with a relatively small population in a European context, that really allowed us to get a lot of reach. I won't go through the individual figures. And I think what we saw as well from the campaign and from the really authentic messages that people had brought forward through their own experience was people wanted to connect. We had originally a target of social media reach of 1.65 million, but it ended up being higher to 3.5 million because people really felt the message, that they empathized with the approach. And we saw obviously increased traffic to the website and a really high view rate through the videos, which means for the kind of non-tech people such as myself, that people, once they started watching the videos, actually stayed watching the videos. They didn't immediately click onto something else. And one of the things, an interesting piece that we tried as well was about partnershiping up with other groups, as ourselves as the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, reaching out and partnering up, particularly with this group called Black and Irish on Instagram, where we gave them kind of a support and free license to try and take our campaign message and to think about how they would develop and how they would reach out to their own audience. They produced extra videos, they did extra interviews, and really we found that worked very, very well for both ourselves and themselves, in terms of it was a message that we both resonated with both of our audiences. And obviously then there was a certain amount of just organic media interest and coverage for the campaign. We saw interviews on podcasts, on Irish National Radio, and in various Irish newspapers. Not for us as the Commission, which I think is the right way as it should be, but for actually some of the people featured in the campaigns, because, as I say, our focus is not about building our brand. We're the Commission, we're there as an independent public body, but it's about building understanding of the issue and the people who are telling their individual stories. And sorry, just a moment on the slides. And thankfully as well, and with thanks also to some people who are in the room here, including Dublin City Interfaith Forum, we saw really wonderful support and take-up by civil society organisations in support of the messaging of the campaign. I won't go into them, they're too numerous to mention, except to say thanks. And also really positive outlook and support from elected officials across parties in the Irish Parliament, which again, our messaging allowed them to show leadership on this issue and allowed them to really put the message out to their own audience, which is something that was very positive. One particular point, and almost towards the end, but I think when we were putting this campaign forward and allowing people and giving people a platform to tell their own experiences, we have to be very mindful, and I'd say this to other people running these kind of campaigns, about how those people may be targeted. Particularly, we know elements of social media are the worst kind of cesspool. And we felt, and we discussed and thought quite deeply about how we have a duty of care to the people that we were profiling, so that if they were targeted in online hate speech, there are certain limits to what we could do, but that we set up a process for ourselves monitoring that, for reporting, and also reaching out and supporting those people if that was the situation. And it did happen, and we did carry out that process, not in a way which unfortunately we couldn't mitigate it in total, but at least the participants of the campaign felt supported and hopefully felt that they were being given every help that we could. And finally, before I hand over to our wonderful colleagues of Finax, if I can give you just one message, if all my talk comes to just one point, it's about, before you think about anything else on a campaign that thinks about human rights issues, think about how you integrate equality and human rights principles. Because having that first step of, if you're going to be talking about someone, talk with them first, to understand their perspectives, to understand issues that you would not have even thought about, which we have found consistently through the disability rights campaign and the racism campaign, that issues were brought up by our consultative groups, that if we had run the campaign without speaking and really engaging with those groups, we would have politely messed it up, and it would have backfired on us, and it would have been very bad for the focus of the issue, but also our individual organisation. So this allows us to effectively and respectfully engage with new audiences and to really start from a point of participation. And as I say, if that's the only message you take away from my particular aspect of this campaign, please take that away. Just one further final point, and it's not a takeaway, but it's just an ask, is that the second phase of our campaign is kicking off in mid-October. So, if you have your own social media platforms, if you have your own audiences, we'd love your support. There's details on screen of how to connect and help us share the messaging, because it's a simple message. Because we're all human means we're all equal, and the hashtag all against racism. So look out for it again from mid-October, and please do share with your networks and connect with us and tell us what you think. So I'll leave the last point of my presentation to Senator Eileen Flynn, who's the first traveller representative in the Irish Parliament in the Senate. And I think her message is a pretty good one. If you can change one person's mind, they will change another, and you get that domino and ripple effect. And hopefully we get to a tipping point. So with that conclusion, I'll hand over to Yana and Svetla in the Finax campaign and their message. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. This was fascinating, and we're really honored to be here together with you, to be able to present our campaign in the context of your work as well. So hi, everyone. We are Yana and Svetla from Finax. We're here to present our Love Speech campaign. Brian, can I ask for the clicker? Thank you. Before we go to the campaign, a little bit about us. Fine Acts is a global non-profit creative studio for social impact. We work across issues and borders on a vast range of human rights issues, from women's rights to climate change to racial justice to freedom and democracy, free speech, and many, many more. This particular campaign that we would be presenting is on hate speech in Bulgaria. In Bulgaria, hate speech has been on the rise, especially towards Roma people, LGBTI plus people, and refugees. So this was our focus of the campaign, and as I said, we are a creative studio. We strongly believe in the power of art to translate complex messages in a language that makes people care and compels them to act. In our work, we create so-called playgrounds where we work with people from other disciplines like creatives or technologists. And in this case, for this campaign, we worked with 35 artists, some of the most prominent artists in Bulgaria, on a vast campaign against hate speech. So the Love Speech campaign, it features several pillars. We're going to briefly present each of them. So the campaign features a series of urban art interventions, a participatory installation, a viral online video, as well as a large free-to-use collection of illustrations. To Brian's previous point, I need to underline that this campaign was developed entirely in consultation and with the support of the communities that we were targeting. So we had focus groups in the beginning and at the end of the campaign, and participants from the groups who were involved in the processes and including in the outputs and as consultants in these in all these stages. And another thing I want to mention here is that the entire campaign is through the prism of hope. So one of our principles in Fine Acts is hope, as I mentioned, play as well. And here all the campaign components are hopeful, even though, as we know, the issue is quite daunting. So I'm going to present initially our Love Speech design sprint. Sprints are it is a format that we developed at Fine Acts. Basically, we brief visual artists on typically a Friday evening. We brief them on a specific human rights issue, and then they have a weekend to, in consultation obviously with activists, to develop ready-made works, and they present the works on a Sunday evening. So for this sprint, we worked with 30 artists from Bulgaria. They developed about 80 works because many developed more than one work for the weekend. The works that you see here are in English. However, all works were developed initially in Bulgarian and then translated into English as well. And all these works are free to use and adapt non-commercially. So I'll talk about this briefly in a second. What we did with the works, first of all, this was deep into the pandemic. Everything was closed. We couldn't hold a typical exhibition. However, we found a way to showcase the entire collection on the streets of Sofia as a pop-up exhibition. We also we put up these so-called city lights in 3 of the biggest Bulgarian cities. They were viewed about 500,000 times. These kind of spaces are typically reserved for more, commercial campaigns, and it was very refreshing. And we got tons of positive response for this campaign done in this, once again, very hopeful way. Taking over these typically commercial spaces. Here I want to mention something that I think is really valuable for anyone working in any kind of activism. This is our platform, The Greats. So The Greats is a unique platform because there we published not only these works that you just saw from our Love Speech campaign, but we have many similar campaigns that we hold. On the grades, we have thousands of works that are published under a Creative Commons license. They're completely free to use and adapt non-commercially. What does this mean? So, for example, this is one of the works from the Love Speech sprint. If whichever work an activist or an active citizen or a nonprofit likes, just click on the big red button, and you would get all the print files, the social media files, but also the work files, meaning that you get the opportunity to adapt these works, to change the copy, to translate the copy into your own language, to even like play with the colors. We have had hundreds of organizations already using the works on the grades. It is a very new platform we launched last year. However, it is really growing fast with hundreds of artists joining with their works all the time. Then quickly to the next component, which is our Love Speech online video. So we did a video that it's quite long. I won't be able to show you the video. I encourage you to watch it on our website as well as all the other components that we will be mentioning. This is a video that became really viral and it was watched over, just in Bulgaria, a country of 7 million people, it was watched 500,000 times. It got huge positive response. Here, we built on a popular psychological experiment that claims that if you watch a stranger in the eyes, you two might fall in love. However, we provided a twist where the strangers were also wearing headphones while watching each other in the eyes for 4 minutes. And in these headphones, each participant was hearing the other's personal story. And in each of these like couples, you would have one story that would be of someone who suffered through a hate speech incident or a hate crime, and we wanted to see what kind of effect this is going to provoke into the listener. This combination of really this intimate connection that we will be creating in connection to these really powerful stories that the people would be hearing, and it is. I think it's one of the loveliest videos that we've produced. It's really positive, even though the subject is so heavy. It created a profound empathetic response into the listeners, into the participants in the video, and yeah, strongly encourage you to view it. And now I would invite my colleague Svetla to continue telling you about the other components of the campaign.
Thanks, Yana. Pleasure to be with all of you here today. So I'm going to talk about the third component of our Love Speech campaign, which are the urban art interventions. We initially decided to organize several, and we reached out to a series of artists in Bulgaria, asking them one question: how would you address hate speech in our country? And they replied, they sent us several proposals, and based on those we selected 3 artists, all working in very different mediums, having very different approaches. So I'm going to share now the 3 of them that we chose to work with. The first one is a mural that we did in collaboration with Nikolai Petrov. He's a graffiti artist. He has a lot of experience in doing all sorts of urban art interventions. And he created a really colorful, hopeful, cheerful mural, which for him was a reflection of his belief that societies in multicolored composition made up of the different unique shapes, colors, tones, nuances of each individual. And this mural also is a permanent mural, so it will stay on in the neighborhood that we put it up. It's a neighborhood where there's a lot of migrants, also a lot of refugees and Roma. So it was a great addition to this neighborhood. Our second urban art intervention was a video installation that we did with an artist called Eileen Shorelov. It was launched on International Roma Day on April 8th this year. And it's quite interesting because you cannot see in these photos, but he attached a street light onto onto a building, and through this he projected videos of Roma onto the ground, basically. And it was a way to illuminate, to give visibility to a community that is completely lacking from our society. It's not visible, or if they are visible, they're often portrayed through many of the stereotypes that we see them through, or through completely misrepresentation in the media. So it was a way for him to broach this topic, to speak about what does it mean, lack of inclusion, what does it mean, discrimination. And the installation is even a provocation, because it asks people to think about who are we stepping on in our society. And so this installation was also went on for a couple of weeks, and then was activated once again during the European Night of Museums in Sofia. Our third installation is called The Others. It's by an artist called Stanislav Belovsky. It's dedicated to the topic of refugees and asylum seekers. It's an interesting work because it combines the classical Japanese artwork from the beginning of the 19th century and contemporary photography. And it's a way for him to create a parallel between the past and the future on an issue as timeless as migration, as refugees, of taking the life-threatening risk of looking for a better life. And he also included in the installation, as you can see, a mirror foil, which allows the onlooker to be part of the current events, to be part of what's going on. And in this one, we worked with Goethe Institute in Bulgaria, who actually hosted the installation. And I wanted to, so during the course of the campaign, we actually had 2 of the works vandalized by a group of by a far-right group. And the 2 incidents, despite like how grave it was, it showed to society the extent to which there is lack of tolerance, lack of acceptance of these different groups. And I think it provoked an additional debate. So one was with our launch of our campaign, but this added a new layer of discussion about, what this means, what does it mean for these groups, what message does this send? And it triggered this additional debate online and offline in the media, which we thought was, an interesting reflection of what's happening. And in this case, both works were actually reworked, but in the case of Belovsky, it obviously couldn't be reworked, and the artist himself tried to transform the hateful message into a positive one. And we additionally added a signal, a sign, indicating how the original work looked like and explaining what had happened. So we have a fourth component to the Love Speech campaign. It was an interactive art installation, a participatory installation. For it, we worked with a conceptual artist called Vito Valentinov, and he created a series of works that tried to explore the connection between words and actions, hate speech and hate crimes. When does one lead to the other, or what can our actions as citizens do, what can they be in this context of hate speech? And people were able to engage with the works. They were able to participate in them, and in this way to try to understand in more depth, what does it actually mean? What does hate speech mean? What is its impact on people? what is its impact on society, on these communities. And I will only be able to share really one of the works that Vito Valentinov created, but feel free to view all of them. That they're on our website, also on our social media. So in this experiment, which he named Burden, it's an experiment with a 40-kilogram boulder. And the message of the installation is that with joint efforts, we can lift the burden and become stronger together against the pressure of hate speech. There's an expression that maybe some of you know. The tongue has no bones. The tongue has no bones, but it is strong enough to break the heart. And it speaks to the power of words and the effect that they can have on us as individuals, but also on whole communities. And in the installation, there is a system of several pulleys that are not very clear in these images, which help reduce the effort that's necessary to lift a burden. And as people who are subjected to hate speech, who are on the receiving side of hate speech, often face a lot of stress. And confronting such situations of hate speech, whether it's online or offline, is connected to a very heavy emotional burden, an emotional toll. And if we as citizens act as the pulleys, and in essence, helping them deal with these situations of direct or indirect hate speech, we can help lift this burden together with them. And I will just basically sum up our presentation today with a bit of stats on our campaign impact. Apologies for the slide. It got garbled. So the video, which was one of the key components of the campaign, was really very powerful. We were able to, it was watched, like Yana said, nearly 500,000 times, which is pretty incredible for Bulgaria. And also it reached over 760,000 people. Our city lights, our posters, were also seen 500,000 times. They were set out in 3 cities, and this is over the course of 1 month. And additionally, we got a lot of engagement of people writing to us online, telling us about their general insights and feelings towards the campaign, specifically with the city lights, which we found interesting. So our posters, our illustrations, the collection that we created for hate speech, was downloaded over 5,000 times. The artworks, as Yana said, are developed in English and Bulgarian. And so many of these downloads are both from local organizations, but also from international organizations, which means that this campaign was able to support organizations working on hate speech, not only in Bulgaria, but globally. And finally, the installation, our participatory installation, which is, it's a specific experience which creates a profound, it's a profound experience for anyone that's involved in the gallery, because they have a chance to participate, to engage with the works and think through what this actually means. 300 people participated and engaged in all the artworks that were developed for the participatory intervention. And finally, overall, this campaign that went on for around 6 months led to, in many ways, led to creating a debate, a conversation on the topic of hate speech, about and about the different groups, societal groups that it impacts. And in Bulgaria specifically, hate speech is not a term that is often recognized. It's considered human rights jargon, and many people really don't understand what it means. And the goal of this campaign was to create sensitivity towards the term, to create an understanding of what it is and to be able to identify it as for what it is, and really to understand what the actual impact is on the individual and on the whole societal group that's being impacted. So essentially, following this campaign, as I noted before, it triggered a backlash from far-right groups, and this really shed light on the scope of the problem. And what's interesting enough, though, it inspired many citizens to be involved and to engage in the conversation, to support the different groups that were being affected, to even to donate to organizations that are dealing with the issue. So we were quite inspired that citizens did take up on this topic, because really hate speech is a very difficult issue to broach. And finally, I think it was quite great to see so many engaged artists in the campaign, to see how they look at the topic, to create a, and basically to involve this issue in their own art practice, and to be able to send a message to citizens on what it actually means, and to create a better understanding of what needs to be done and how we can be better citizens. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And if anyone wants to talk to us afterwards, or you can reach out to the platform on FRA, we'd be happy to talk more about this campaign. And over to you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I think we're tight on time, so we'll see if we have a moment for a question or two. But I think you can really see the glue that links these two campaigns, that human rights is regularly described as a visibility project. And what these two campaigns are trying to do is about give visibility and to promote the participation of the people who are seeing challenges to their human rights and equality. And doing that in innovative ways, not just rolling out the same old tired campaigns, based on facts or figures that people aren't really engaging with. I could tell you how many people have been subject to hate speech in Ireland or so on, but will that connect emotionally with you, or on a way that actually you'll remember in 5 minutes' time? These two campaigns are about trying to build that empathetic connection. And I suppose, we are not organizations that sell cars or something that can be manufactured. This is about building hope, building empathy, and building connection towards what we're offering is a better future in terms of respect for human rights and equality. So with that, I think we might have a slot for maybe one or two very quick questions. I don't see anyone waving furiously to stop me. So we have a couple of microphones, and there's a hand here in the front. Just getting the microphone.
Hello. Yes.
Hi. Sorry.
Thank you very much for this presentation. My name is Amel Jawid. I'm a human rights lawyer at the Ministry of Justice in Luxembourg. And I was very, very pleased with this presentation. Actually, it gives inspiration, because as lawmakers, we are drafting bills and it's often not accessible to people. And we are working in a young service promoting human rights at the Ministry of Justice, so at the level of policymakers. And this gives us very much inspiration. And my question is, did you, with your experience in Ireland and Bulgaria, work with policymakers? And also with the subventions, did you get subvention support from governments, or was it with NGOs or associations? Thank you.
I think for time we might take, there was one other quick question indicated, and then we'll answer. There's three quick questions. We'll take the three and then we'll respond if that's okay. Would you mind just passing on the microphone so that just the gentleman here in the middle, and then we'll get to you, sir.
Thanks, Brian, and thank you, Mrs. Svetla, and for your presentations. I just want to say that I had the privilege of being part of the consultative group in Ireland when we ran the All Against Hate campaign, And apart from the massive impact it had, what it did, it also brought together all the groups that participated, all those agencies that you saw there on the screen. They got a better understanding of who they are and how they work, because before that, they would have heard of each other, but going through that work, collaborative work, it certainly enabled them to connect with each other more deeply on such a sensitive subject. So thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. And the gentleman here.
Thank you very much. My name is Gerhard Ermischer. I am the president of the Conference of International Non-Governmental Organizations at the Council of Europe. I really love your Love Speech project. But what I see is it's very urban. It's very urban centered. And we have this enormous problem with the gap between the urban societies and the non-urban societies. And I know it's an oversimplification. But I had the chance to talk to a very clever diplomat of one of these countries just last week in Strasbourg. And what he said to me is, we did not look at the countryside. We did not listen to the people in the countryside. We have lost the people in the countryside. And now we do not know how to win them back. I have no answer, but maybe you have an idea.
Do you want to lead off on that?
I can thank you all for these questions. Very briefly, first of all, on the question whether we collaborate with governments and policymakers, in all honesty, no, not until now, like real collaboration or real support. However, what we do is we work with non-profits. We have worked with bodies like the UN Rapporteur for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We develop concepts, or we even produce entire campaigns for other organizations in support of their needs and in support of their work. So we both work as a creative studio where we decide what to focus on and what to do, like in the case of the Love Speech campaign, or we are being commissioned by organizations from around the world to work on their campaigns and to basically help them in their communications. So this is what I can say to this question. And to your question, I completely agree. And it is quite an urban campaign. And we are constantly thinking as to how to bring culture out of where culture typically happens. However, in this case, we tried to really have different products. And for example, this online video being watched 500,000 times, we know that it has been watched outside of the big cities because it really had a truly wide reach. So typically in our campaigns, we try to think of the different groups in society, and we try to think of products that would reach them in the best way. But Svetla, maybe you want to add a little bit more?
Actually, I just wanted to briefly add to the first question. I mean, we would very much like to work with governments and institutions, although when this campaign was launched, we were still in a government that was a coalition with a very, very, very conservative far-right group. So it's very difficult to launch these type of campaigns in a situation where the government won't really be listening. So we were looking for different avenues and different ways. So speaking to the public was another option for us.
And I might just add a couple of very quick words just to the question over here. For ourselves, because we're the National Human Rights Institution, we have our own budget. We're an independent public body. So actually, it was our commission who decided to allocate some of our budget to the campaign, but towards an end as well, that within an Irish context, say the racism campaign, there was very active debates in Ireland about the development of a new national anti-racism policy and new legislation on tackling hate speech. So, we're trying to contribute and aid that discussion within an Irish context. And thank you, Adrian, for the comments about the gelling of the various civil society groups around the issue of racism, which was certainly an unintended but a very welcome consequence of the campaign. And finally, just conscious of time, to the issue of the kind of rural and urban divide of how you communicate these kind of messages. Certainly, we were very mindful, like Ireland is a very rural, I'm from a small village in the west of Ireland myself, so it is something that was very to the forefront of our thinking in how we rolled out the campaign. And certainly we've involved regional radio stations, regional papers to try and help deliver the message, and actually sought to try and widen the conversation beyond the kind of normal commentators to the more discussions around people's breakfast tables and dinner tables, be that in rural or urban environments, and hopefully with the second phase of that campaign we can hopefully do that a bit more. I think, do we have any time for any further questions? Yeah, if there's any further questions that we can take, I think we'll probably leave it at that. But just to thank everyone for both online and in the room for your involvement. Our particular thanks to the sign language and language interpreters, and thanks again for everyone. And please engage with these two campaigns and many others that you've heard of at this Fundamental Rights Forum to try and push the positive messaging that we can all share. Thank you very much. Bye.